And welcome, one and all, to two old guys in their 50s and 60s talking about the 70s and 80s, the Retro Podcast. And here to join me, as always, is wonderful Mr. Al Odessa, woodworking and something or other, and
And Maker
maker
Shop.
and maker shop,
Kilroy. Kilroy
Kilroy.
79763.
And I, of
Hello.
course, am your jovial host, Javi, and we are. Oh, by the way, folks, speaking of Javi, you'll notice I'm on my channel is Javi's Woodshop because I started as Javi's Woodshop and I like woodshop, and in 2 or 3 years it will be back to woodworking. But for now, since I'll be building the house in the next couple years and stuff, I'm going to a more general. The name of the channel is going to change to Javi Unboxed. So always with the vanity nameplates, but Unboxed covers pretty much everything out of the box. Anyway, good evening, all. Good evening, one and all. Good evening, Mitchell. And right now, you are one and all until more join. And tonight's wonderful topic is computer peripherals of the 70s and 80s, and we'll be hitting as many as we possibly could from all the little from our peripherals, from our computer peripherals. Al will handle the PC side of things, and I'll handle the Apple II side of things, or the 6502. Oh, he's also got some experience in Commodore as well, and we all do, and we'll just throw everything together, lump it all together. And we'll probably hit pocket computers and stuff like that afterwards if we have time. Good evening, Paul. Good to see you. All right, so let's begin. The thing that let me share a couple stories of peripherals. The main reason I bought my Apple II back in 79, 80. The main reason I bought my Apple II back then, it was when they first came out. It was an Apple II Revision 0 board. They had, I think, 8 revisions in the Apple IIs, and then they went to the Apple IIe, Apple II, whatever. I don't know the technical, the detailed part of it, but I know that when I took apart my Apple, it was a Revision 0 board, and I actually had it replaced to a Revision 1 board because the board was I had some problems with it, and they'd rather switch it than anything else. Man, you know how much that thing would cost, a Revision 0 board now? I mean, collectors wise. Anyway, so, and it's easily fixable with our regular soldering tools. It isn't, anyway. The main reason I got it was the expansion slots. That was it for me. It was the expansion slots. I mean, I liked and I told you guys the story before. I liked the TI 994, and that was the first one I saw. But the TI 994, all it had was, it had the cartridge. Mm-hmm. I could put a RAM cartridge, I could put a game cartridge, I could put an external peripheral cartridge, but it was one cartridge. Oh, and then there were some other connectors.
That was at first.
But the Apple II, I mean, it was beautiful. It was 7, 8 slots, and PR number sign 6 was how you boot the drive. You reboot the drive by going PR, that's peripheral, number 6, and on number 6 is where you normally would have, that's the default location for the disk drive controller. You'd have the disk drive cables coming out of the back, and it would power your 2 5.25-inch disk drives. I mean, another wonderful peripheral. And keep an eye on the comments as it goes by, because I know people are going to be mentioning their own favorite peripherals. Now, I filled up those slots in no time. I had, and this is hard for me to remember because we're talking, this is 40 years ago. So you lost your camera, but I still hear you. So this was about 40 years ago, and we're looking at, let's see. One of the things that I got was, obviously, I bought a Paper Tiger printer dot matrix printer. So I had a parallel port interface. Okay. I had the disk drive interface. I had a parallel port interface. I had a serial interface going to a little box that was a Texas Instruments text-to-speech box. It used the TI chip that we all know what it sounds like because it's the voice. Now we all know it as the voice of
Stephen Hawking.
Yes. But before Stephen Hawking was ever ill, I was actually using that, to imitate my. Oh man, those were the days. Tell you
what, yes. Yes, I agree.
Another thing that I had, another card that I had was a RAM expansion slot. Okay, so that makes what, 3 cards, something like that, 4. And then I had an Apple Profile. That was the name of their hard drive. An Apple 5 megabyte, and I've told this story before, a 5 megabyte.
Not gig.
Not gig, megabyte. 5 megabyte hard drive. It had, I don't know how many platters, and I believe they were like 8-inch platters because this thing was monstrous. Beautifully designed, sleek, like Apple does. And it fit perfectly on top of the computer, under the monitor. It was 5 megabytes. It was a hard drive, and it was $4,000. And I paid it because I wanted more memory, and stuff. And so we had disk drives, we had that. Oh, I bought a digitizing card. So I had a digitizing card, and let me tell you, okay, I'll go off the rails a little bit.
Did it have like a wand or a
no, not that type, but I did have one of those as well. But this was a video digitizing card. Okay. And what it is it was just a simple card that you stick in, and it accepted video input, nothing else.
They were RCA. I bet they were RCA input.
RCA connector, yellow RCA connector, video input. And what would happen is I had a program. This was, I was cutting edge. 7th, 8th grade, I joined Junior Achievement. 8th or 9th grade, I don't even remember. I joined Junior Achievement. Now, have you ever been a part of Junior Achievement, or do you know what it is?
No, I wasn't ever motivated enough.
Yeah.
I
was talked into it by a friend. He goes, "Hey, have you ever tried this?" And I go, "No." And it turned out to be a fantastic experience.
I'm sure it was.
It was basically, Junior Achievement was nothing more than basically a bunch of, let me put it this way. An adult business owner gives of his time or sponsors a Junior Achievement team. And then a bunch of teams compete for profits, margins. We learned all about business, all that stuff. We're talking, this is 7th, 8th grade. My Junior Achievement, Daryl Utvich, I'll never forget him. I wonder if he's still around. I don't know. Daryl Utvich, he was a high up in FPL, Florida Power and Light. And he gave us, it was great because we got to go into Florida Power and Light, our local electric company, and we got to see how the phone centers worked back when they had, in-house phone centers and stuff like that. We got a whole tour of the facility. It was fantastic. So he was the head of the thing. And anyway, so we had a bunch of kids, and we created a bunch of different products. The most useful product we created, the most profitable product we created were these little, all it was we bought all these little fluffy balls, put googly eyes on them, flat feet with stickers on them. We hot glued them, and they were like these, and we had a little apparatus that would print on a ribbon, would print anything you wanted. So we'd go to schools and solicit, like for a pep rally or something, school spirit kind of thing, and say, go Sabres or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So the point is, wrapping back to the peripherals, one of the things we did was we went out and we rented a kiosk in a mall, and we came up with different products, and we sold those different products. I happen to have a whole computer system with a camera, and I'm talking, I had to have my mini VCR connected to my camera, so the output of the mini VCR would go into the digitizer. So I had my computer there as well. I had a big aluminum tripod on this thing and a screen in the back. So somebody in the mall could walk in front of the screen. I'd take their picture. I'd say, smile, take their picture. And it would convert it. It would digitize their picture. And with my Paper Tiger printer, man, I came in loaded for bear. I had all this stuff. Oh, yeah, I lost you muted yourself. Let me see if I can unmute you. Oh, no, you muted you. Hang on.
Wait.
There you go.
You muted me. I unmuted myself. Yeah. What resolution was it? Was it like 72 dpi or
something like 72? Yeah, it's a dot matrix printer using characters.
Yes, I remember those.
You've seen those things. How many of you out there have ever been to a mall and seen that picture where they print your face using nothing but characters? Yes. The @ sign appears a lot because it's one of the thickest, and then I mean, that's what I sold. And I sold them for like $20 for a couple of sheets of paper and some ink and all this. Anyway, that was fantastic. Another thing that we sold was we embossed something. We had a leather embossing machine. Anyway, I mean, it embossed. We had gold foil, and we would choose the letters. And well, anyway, going back to the peripheral, that was probably the text-to-speech and the video digitizer were probably my two favorite. I mean, how can I describe to someone? I mean, if Wozniak was here, he'd understand. If Gates was here, he'd understand. If many who lived that life would understand the incredible joy I felt as a teenage or as even a young college kid, seeing these 5 megabyte drive, new peripherals. Oh, my world is expanding. A digitizer, all the things you can do with this new technology. I mean, it's like, okay, here, I'll put a good example. I almost got the feeling, but not quite, when I bought this thing. This is a Stream Deck, folks, okay? Let me tell you, I don't know if you... Huh?
Pro streamer.
No, it's what it is it's it's expensive, but they come in 3 categories: a 6, a 15, and I got a 32 button. It's fantastic because you program it with pictures. I mean, these are all little LCD. Let me bring it up to the. Speaking of newer peripherals now, but what I'm getting at is this is
a little bit there, Javi.
What's that?
You're cheating a little bit there, Javi.
Yeah. So like this is the up menu button. So I go up menu and I program this menu here. So, okay, what do I want to do? I want to go to this menu, and then that has this stuff. So I could program multiple menus. And I could have one pops up my email, another one brings up my website, another one logs me into my finances, another one goes straight to Amazon. I mean, yeah, I could type in AMA and Amazon will pop up. I could put a button on anywhere I want on the screen, and I could put a favorite. But on my desk, right next to me, at the touch of a button, I've got all my favorite things. What's more, I did the same thing on here's the funny part. I did the same thing on my website. I created my personal website has all my buttons on it. Okay. So I can actually my homepage has all my instant buttons, and I just click on a button. So I always go to my homepage, and I'm very comfortable, and it's Google, so it follows me wherever I go. It's an extension, and I design my own homepage, so wherever I am, I go to my Google homepage and on Chrome, and boom, I have all my convenient links. But guess what? When I'm home, this thing will open up Google. So it saves me a step. I mean, and this to me, this and there are other instances in my life where I've purchased a piece of technology. See, the iPhone, it was great. It was great. But I had read so much about it and everything. It wasn't, you know, the iPad was probably more impactful for me than the iPhone. But things like I have a writing notepad that writes stuff and things like that. There are certain new technologies. This is the type of feeling I want to get across. When we were young and we would experience something new like this, even when we were older and experience something new, like there is no way I could describe this feeling of awe, this feeling of you know, aha moments, revelations from a simple peripheral, a simple computer, a simple peripheral. You know, recently, to a much lesser degree, I bought, not that recently, but I bought an M1. Okay, an M1 chip computer. You know, and yeah, the new Macs. They have the M1 chip in them, and the Mini. It's fantastic. It's cheaper than the rest of them. You know, you could sell one of your old computers at the right time, and you buy an M1, and you're actually saving money, and you got it 10 times faster. This computer runs circles around my old computer. Circles. It's impressive, like to no end. I'm just wishing they put more memory in it to make it even faster. But it's tough because the memory, the CPU, and the GPU all on one chip, and RISC-based. It's all custom. I mean, anyway, let's not get into that. Going back to the peripherals, because wow, this was one heck of a segue, as we always do.
To me, back in the 80s, a peripheral, the main peripheral,
yeah,
was the disk drive.
Yep.
The external disk.
External disk.
We don't even have CDs or DVDs anymore. We get everything digitally anymore. That was the main peripheral.
The feeling of going from a cassette to a disc,
which is another peripheral. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. That's
even the feeling. I'll tell you, even the cassette. Do you remember writing your first BASIC or assembler or machine code program, whatever it may have been?
I think it was BASIC, actually.
BASIC program. You're writing your first program, and okay, you don't have any place to save it, so you run it. Oh, you're fancy. You leave the computer on, but the computer will shut off, and then all of a sudden you write it again. So you always have it, you know, written down so you can copy it over. And then there's a point where, oh my God, you have a cassette tape. You save a big program on a cassette tape. You pray that nothing happens to the computer and no glitches after you've typed in the entire program and are waiting the 3 to 5 to 10 minutes for that cassette tape to record. And then you rewind and you click verify, and it has to, and once it verifies it, you're like, my program is saved. I can do anything I want. Even that little feeling. Oh, man. Yep. Paul and the dot matrix printers.
Yep. Yeah. And that's kind of like the backup of the backup in a sense. If you lose that program on that cassette, and if you printed it out on a piece of paper, at least you had it, you know.
Print
and
everything.
You could put it back in. Yes, exactly.
Oh my God, did I print so many things? And I had, you know, let me tell you, the Paper Tiger was such a fine dot matrix printer at the time that I think it was It's called Paper Tiger 360 or something. I don't remember what the name of it. Paper Tiger something. But the Paper Tiger was such a cool dot matrix printer for me. And the fact that I had a Mac, and you know Steve Jobs with his artistic fonts and this and that, I could push a font down, legibly read it at 5 point, and I made so many cheat sheets. 5 point type dot matrix printer. You should. I mean, super high pitched squeal because it's you know, but oh, it was fantastic. I impressed my friends. You know what it is when everything is on mimeograph paper or half written or typed, and then all of a sudden you see tiny little print for the first time in your life. We forget that, you know, 50 years ago, that was non-existent. 40 years ago,
in fact,
non-existent.
Holes in cards were probably more, you were more apt to see holes in cards than actual print.
Yes. Yes. I mean, newspapers printed, and they was with, I mean, well, you know how a linotype works. It's you type in the letters, and this big machine moves the ka-chunk, 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 moves all the stamped. I
don't know if this is considered a peripheral. I guess it is, but I remember from the 70s, circa about 78, I remember using a machine that was like a printer, but it was actually an input terminal that made hollerith cards. It was an IBM 019 key punch machine.
It was key punch.
That's what actually typed. Yeah, that's what actually typed. Well, actually didn't type. What it did is it punched holes in. And
well, here's a funny story. I don't know the whole entire story. I forgot it already because, you know, CRS when you get to my age. But if you look at one of the YouTube videos where Steve Wozniak is giving an interview, he'll talk about the time when he used to punch in key punch cards, right? And there was this one program, one of the first programs, one of the first computers that he was allowed to use. And what had happened was the key punch, if I'm not mistaken, the key punch was a separate set of keys. He had memorized he knew how to type the proper set of keys with the wrong keyboard.
He knew what the designation of.
He knew what the designation was to get the right, you know, because people would type and then they get the program that would run garbage, and he would just, you know, and it's like I remember using those key punch machines 5-10 years after Woz did, but holy cow, those were fantastic times. Fantastic times. I mean, so is now, but don't get me wrong, but you know,
the beginning, I think, of the computer revolution. I'm going to call it that. And you know, they're talking about the VIC-20 out there. The VIC-20 was simple, had 16 megs of memory. No, 16K of memory, right?
16K, yeah.
16K. Look, this is how things change.
Yeah.
But you got stuff done. You had little games you can play. You can probably do your checkbook on it. But that started a lot of people in the computer hobby or field. I see a couple out there. I see Mitchell and I see Canadian Maker. He had tape on his VIC-20, and then when floppies came out, another peripheral. Right? Wow, that's just the neatest thing.
By the way, there's a guy called the 8-Bit Guy on YouTube. Yes. And if you guys haven't seen him, I highly recommend him if you're into computers, because, I mean, I watch his stuff all the time, and I'll just sit and I'll relax and just listen to him talk about the past.
Yes.
And there are some things that I don't know, but very few, but it's so fun listening to him and bringing back all those memories. I mean, the other day he was talking about how the differences between the black and white screens, the 4-color, and the first PCs how they did. You could actually have a bunch of different characters, and you can color the letter and the foreground, but only of the text of that block. In other words, let's say, for instance, okay, let's say right now, look at this big screen. Let's say my half of the screen is the letter O, and your half of the screen is the letter U or whatever. We could I could make the O white and my background red, and you can make your U black and your background blue, but I cannot make a line unless we do something like that where there's a line connecting and it happens to be the same color. We can't put like a white line in between us if it's blue and yellow and yours is. That's one example. Okay, I mean,
the matrix of dots.
The matrix of dots, and then they came along with, and then there was another one where they had different gaming machines and different computers had basically one little lone set of pixels that could
programmed,
that could go along the whole screen, and it would have anywhere between 1 and 64 of them, whatever. And then we move up to the higher resolutions. Once we get into the higher resolutions, forget it. I mean, there's no. I mean, you're watching us now on 720 DPI, and you get on a. I don't know what the resolution of your screen is, but it's probably up there.
It's a TV. It's not a 4K or anything. But, hey, I want to give a shout out to Shelly Cole out there from No.
Hey, Shelly's out there.
Yes.
Good to see you, Shelly. Yep, know what Mom knows.
I see you too, Shelly.
Yep.
Thank you for the thumbs up.
So we're here reminiscing about the computers, peripherals today, and okay, so we have our main ones. We have our disk drive. We have our printers and stuff. What are the peripherals do you remember? I remember the digitizer. I remember the speech to text. I say I remember the speech to text, and the speech to text is a peripheral, but it is a serial speech to text. And the plug-in card it was actually two peripherals, because you need the serial card in the computer to output serial, and then you need the little box that will convert the serial to text. And the same thing goes for the printer. The printer is, you need a parallel card or a Centronics connector or a DB25 parallel card, and you need the printer itself. So a lot of those things, are multiple stages. I'm trying to think of what other type of peripherals. Now, if Jim was out here, if Jim Bsr was out here, I mean, he could probably talk forever on all the different, fancy. I had another Bsr. I had the Bsr X10 peripheral. I completely forgot about that. Okay, so I don't know if anybody here is familiar with Bsr X10 technology. Okay, it is one of the first, if not the first, automation technologies. You had the box with 16 codes, A through P, and 16 numbers. And you could set your code to A, and that's your whole house is on A. You plug it into the wall. All you do is plug it, and you plug your things like you do with the automation stuff now. But instead of being Wi-Fi, instead of being Zigbee or Z-Wire or all that stuff, it was actually in the lines. It would use, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but basically, if you look at a sine wave, when it crosses the 0 threshold, it would actually put a little voltage in there. And 60 hertz, that's 60 times a second, this thing would put in 8 bits and 8 bits continuously while you're pressing the button. So A1, A2, P5, whatever the code was. And it would actually be 24 bits. It's the letter, the number, and the action. All lights on, light dim, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that's the technical part of it. But the bottom line is I had a peripheral in my computer, which I would connect to, another box, and it would connect to the plug. And I would control whatever I wanted. Obviously I'd have to put modules everywhere, but my lights and stuff, we're talking mid 80. That we're talking 85. I had a company called Home Automation Inc. And I would do this for people. I would set up all different types of home automation systems. Now, back then, home automation we had certain programmable. I had my house fully programmable because I had the computer always on. And if somebody wanted that, I could do that. But most of the time it was just remote control buttons is what it was. And, to turn on and off your lights from your bedside or whatever, or to have it going on schedule,
was it hardwired or was it data signal down some type of cable?
All of them is hardwired. It used the line voltage. It would use the neutral line of the house. Mm-hmm. And here's a funny problem or issue with that system is that if you had you have your house on two-phase, you have two phases in your house, 120 and 120. Well, if you didn't have a bridge in between the two, something to bridge the connection, you could actually have the signal only sending on one side of one of the poles and not on the other. And there was a big problem because sometimes what would happen is because it's relative from the neutral to one side, the voltage. So what happened is if you had the neutral on the other side, if you had let's say, okay, red, black, and white. Red and black are hot, the two different phases, and you got the white neutral wire. If you had your system where it happened to be on the red side of the phase, then it would use the red and white wires. But if you had any type of module on the black, it wouldn't hear it. You needed to tie them together, and there was a filter for that. But bottom line is that was one of my that was a favorite. I used to love, when I was a kid, I was into all the emerging technologies. You get old, you slow down, and you just...
I want to say it's something you don't see very much anymore, especially on computers. You see them on home consoles and in a different way. Mm-hmm. But a peripheral back in the 80s that was really a decent peripheral, and actually I think it worked both on the Commodore 64, but the Atari Joystick. It was a little square joystick with a button on it, and it moved back and forth. And it was a serial connector. With
those concentric circles. Yep.
And it was a I don't know, a staple.
Apple had a similar joystick. It was it was X, Y. It was 1 or 0 in 9 different directions. Mm-hmm. Well, 8 different directions
there that I remember so well.
Yeah, it was 9 if you include 0, 0, but it was 8 different directions. And yeah, you could the joystick wasn't graduated like these are today, and a variable resistance or variable. It was pure digital. Yeah. It was move it over to the side. Yeah, it was basically like, well, a lot of them today are that way too, because you could use your keyboard. That we played games by using ASD, QWE, and ZXC. Those were our keys on the left side. Then the right side was the JKL and all the others, or the
I still do. I still have some games that I play with that. Yeah, and 2-player games I use the right side with some other keys on the right hand side. I'm looking at one that I'm not very familiar with, but it's called the Power Glove. and it looks like it's a glove for epic gaming, what they're going to call epic gaming. But
is that that's a newer peripheral?
No, it's an old 80s peripheral.
Oh, really?
It's a glove with buttons on it like this, and what looks like a Nintendo controller.
Yeah.
One of the the plus.
Right. The plus. Yeah.
A start.
ABXY. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's weird. That is funny. I've never seen that one.
I never had either, to be honest with you. But now that I'm looking at it, it's interesting.
Speaking of peripherals, the original Apple mouse, well, even the one now, but things have changed. The Apple mouse for years was only one button mouse. Because that's all you needed.
Somebody was complaining the other day. How come this doesn't have a scroll on it?
Which one?
No, an Apple mouse. Their Apple mouse did not have a scroll on it. They were complaining because of that.
The new ones or the old ones?
Well, the one that he had.
Oh, okay. Because see, this one here. I mean, that's one thing I love. The Magic Mouse. This is. I'm right now.
Yes. Oh, and he cuts me off. Yeah, it works, folks. It worked. My scheme to take over the show worked.
Not that button. When you scroll left, it's the back page. So let me not scroll this anymore, shall I? Yeah, that happens. But yeah, let's see what other stuff. Okay, so let's see other peripherals that I used to have. One of them was I used to have a few peripherals just because I was crazy about monitoring systems, but these are not normal. These are extreme. I used to have them that would monitor line voltage and monitor and all these different sensors and things like that.
How about this one? This one? How about the modem? How about
the modem? Oh, that's a beautiful peripheral to talk about. All right. So another story. My first exposure with computers happened. No, that's not true. I had the Apple II, but I was already into the Apple II. But my first exposure with mainframe computers happened in ninth or 10th grade, and my buddy Carlos Echenique, my mentor and guru.
Do you remember what computer it was? Mine was the IBM 360 370.
It was the Univac 1108.
Okay.
And that was in FIU. And I was in St. Brendan's High School on a 110 baud acoustical modem.
Yes, acoustical, where you take the headset. We don't even have headsets anymore.
We don't have headsets. We took the headset, put it on the modem, and we called FIU 348-2000 or 348 something. I forgot it was definitely a 348, and they changed all the numbers, but it was a 348 number. Oh man, that number was it was fantastic. And then we'd always call that number, we'd listen, whoop, we put it on the modem, and instantly. And then we got the upgrade to 300 baud. Wow! We would input grades. We would input yearbook names. A lot of database stuff. Basically, the vice principal had Carlos and myself for data entry. I would be there enjoying every minute. You talk about geeking out. Other guys are, I guess, going out with girls and this and that and stuff. That came way later in life for me. I was so into my buddy Carlos, and I would spend the entire 4 a.m. I'm still 15. Carlos is driving me home at 4 a.m. from the school. I'd wake up 4 hours later and go right back to school. 4 a.m. And it wasn't one time, it was multiple times. I love that. I live for that. Programming. We would be programming. We would be data entry. We both, there was a few things that what we would do is we'd have a list. Like he'd have a grade book with a bunch of grades from one grade. I'd have the grade book from a bunch of grades from the other grade. He would enter his, and on his terminal, we 2 terminals. That's all we had. That's all we could afford at that place. You know, I would enter my list, and then he wrote a comparison program to make sure to see if there was any discrepancy. So that was our redundancy. That was our checking to make sure we didn't get anything right or anything wrong. So that's how we were sure all the grades were right. I mean, it wasn't much of a redundancy. We could both make the same error, and the kid would end up with a messed up grade. But but regardless, the vice principal trusted us, and I had a blast. We would also enter yearbook names. There was a lot we used to do with the mostly database stuff. Like I said, it was just we'd fill up databases of problem. I love that. I loved doing that.
Yeah. When I started taking computer classes in '78, and we're working on the IBM 360, 370, our form of input was Hollerith cards, and it was called data input. It wasn't programming, but we learned BASIC, we learned Fortran, but it was called data input. I don't even think it was called data processing.
No, it was called data. But you want to hear something funny? Is after I left, okay, so my freshman year or sophomore year, in high school, we were on mainframes. We got our first my sophomore year. We got our first Ohio Scientific 8-inch floppy mini computers.
Wow.
Okay. And then a year later, the whole school got a whole bunch of PC juniors. But the higher up kids were still working on the Ohio Scientifics because the PC juniors were not for computer class. They were actually they had certain programs that they would learn from. It was really weird. But anyway, throughout all of that, okay, so we're talking for the time, very advanced computers. Then I go to college. You're going to love this. Miami-Dade College had my first computer class. It was like we went back in time because they didn't have any computers. It was all on punch cards.
Yeah.
So I lived the whole punch card thing and stuff because they didn't get funding for computers until, later. And oh my God, that was funny. And then I switched over to FIU, and then by that time again, no personal computers. Forget personal computers at this time. I mean, we're talking 280 to forget 286, 8088s and 8086s were
had electric typewriters.
Yeah, my computer at home, my Apple could run circles around any other computer. But at FIU, we had computer time on the CPU time. And after a certain amount, and that was the beautiful thing about it, because we could program and spend hours programming, and when you run it, it'll say 0.046 seconds CPU time. They charge you for the CPU time, but most of it, Fortran, COBOL,
and they did charge for time. Yes.
Yeah, they charge for CPU time, not for terminal time. Yeah. At least our college didn't. And I was running. Anybody out there that has ever programmed in COBOL, Common Business Oriented Language, or in Fortran, but Fortran Fortran's.
I love Fortran.
Fortran is great, but COBOL.
Yeah. COBOL is business.
Oh my God. The amount of it's like you're writing a novel. You are writing a novel. It's not like 10 print hello. It's
define,
and I don't even remember it. First, you got procedure section, variable section, this section, that section. You got 5 different sections, and you got to practically write a whole sentence. Define variable owl as it's just I don't remember the specifics, nor do I care to, but I remember the feeling of typing, and one letter off, and your whole program could fail. Luckily, that made us very good at troubleshooting.
I was at Texas Tech
Mm-hmm.
taking a COBOL class. And it was at the time when they had input terminals with keyboards and teletype machines.
Yeah.
Teletype machines.
Yeah.
And what we were using, because we were good enough to use the terminals and keyboards, we were using the teletype machines to input into the mainframe. Now there's a peripheral, the teletype machine. It can be both, and correct me if I'm wrong, an input and an output device.
And an output, yeah. It could be an input. You could type, and it could be a printer. It could.
Yeah.
In fact, the AP and all those news, they all use teletype machines as both inputs and outputs when they write their stories and when you receive a story on the wire.
Yep.
But oh man, those peripherals were fantastic. And then, so I mean, and now I'm not going to touch on it too much, but then there were also the peripherals for the little computers like I said, not the VIC-20 so much as the Commodore 64, the Texas Instruments. They all had the cartridges.
Let me touch base on the TI-99-4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They went at first. They came out. They had the cartridge. I don't remember exactly. I probably should have looked at one, but I remember plugging in the cassette, and the cassette hooked up with just the audio cable. But my point in this is, they came out with this honking expansion rack that plugged into the computer that had hard drives in it and I want to say sound cards and everything in there. I don't know if you ever saw that peripheral, but it was a I'm going to say about that big, an expansion box that cost like 3 times what the computer cost.
Yeah.
And but it was like a day late, $1 short. By that time had gone on and newer technologies had come out and
TI also had the plug-in speech synthesizer for the TI-994.
I'm trying to remember what it was called.
You mean the cartridge expander for the 3 carts?
Yeah. The
Naveron. It was the Naveron cartridge expander, if I remember correctly.
The voice, the TI-994 voice.
That was a TI-994. That was the speech synthesizer module.
Because see, they were giving it away with when you bought a TI-994. One of their marketing things was you get the speech synthesizer with it if you wanted, because speech back then wasn't a normal thing. I mean, it was 8-bit music, but not speech. And actually, they had good speech out of that thing.
Yep. Yeah, those are great little computers. I mean, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind. I mean, I'm looking on one now on eBay for $15. Is probably broken, but you can get it to work. I mean, I see a lot of these. They're going anywhere from $15 to $50. I mean, TI-994s, they didn't.
Well, the last price that they were marketing them at was at $99, and I want to even say it went down to $49 at that point.
Probably.
They were really trying to get them. Now this is the 99.4A, not the 99.4.
Right, not the 99.4. Right.
Yeah, which is the same computer. It was just enhanced.
It just had the chiclet keyboard, and for some reason or no, it was a lot more expensive with the chiclet keyboard. Well, it was just a simple matter of they tried to compete with Apple and something like that for that price. And despite being Texas Instruments, they didn't have the marketing. They didn't have. So, well, the bottom line is they just.
The irony in that is that Apple was such and I'm going to say it this way, such a smaller company than Texas Instruments. Texas Instruments made their own chips. They actually manufactured their own chips, but yet Texas Instruments, are they even still around? I think we talked about it the other day, but I don't remember if they even are still around. Maybe overseas?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't remember exactly whatever happened. We had a TI assembly plant here, or a TI manufacturing plant here in the middle of Odessa area, and it was a huge complex, very upwardly technological, very secure. You had to get an escort to go back there and such.
Yeah.
I don't know how they failed. I just and well, I guess I know how Apple did a better job. This iPhone is way better than anything TI Texas Instruments came out with.
Yes. That's absolutely incredible. The prices that these things are going for. If you wanted to buy an old used computer, there's one that's, I want to say, not worth anything, but unlike the Apple II, which you try to buy an Apple II now, and then a vintage Apple II, and well, I mean, let's see, what's this one? Ooh, $20.50. 6 days left. There's no way that'll stay at that price. What's really cool is for $6, you can buy an Apple II Raspberry Pi emulator.
There you go.
And basically, they actually sell, which is the cutest thing in the world, they sell a little tiny Apple II Raspberry Pi box. You stick the Raspberry Pi in it and stuff, and you can even buy it with a little monitor, but you can connect it to a regular monitor. It is a full-blown Apple II. It's a USB monitor, but it runs Apple II emulator. I mean, I have the I can run Apple II stuff because I have my emulator and stuff, but so I can play Oregon Trail or whatever, but
Mule was my favorite. Mule was my favorite. And Mule was probably one of the most popular games.
Yeah.
But yet a lot of people don't remember it that I know. But
$300, $500, $250. That's what Apple IIs are going for. See, I mean, I'd love to have one. I wish I had my old one. And I wish I didn't throw it in the garbage. But because I mean, it got to the point where I bought new Macs and new Apples, and but holy cow, this one's in really bad condition.
In with the new, yes.
Out with the old, in with the new.
Reminisce about the old stuff.
Yep. But anyway, yeah, we had those were great little computers there. Let's see what anybody else is saying out there as far as he was talking about the C128 that could run C64 and Commodore 64 and N128 and
CPM.
And CPM. Yeah, I remember those. Now, one thing I remember in school, moving on to how much time we got? A little time left. Yeah, we got 8 minutes left. One thing that I remember in school was the Radio Shack pocket computer. Pocket Computer 1, Pocket Computer 2, 3, and 4, and my Model 100, which was basically a glorified word processor is what it was. But I'll tell you, those little pocket computers, I had a buddy of mine who bought the pocket computer, and he would remember how I talked about digitizing with letters?
Yes.
He made a little program to print out with letters out of he had the printer attachment on the pocket computer. I don't know if you remember. Pocket computers like this. It was a pocket computer. You have to have a big pocket, but it's a pocket computer. Then you have a little printer attachment which used a thermal printer roll, like an adding machine roll, but thermal paper. And I found it so fascinating that he wrote a little program that would print in characters the Starship Enterprise.
Very nice. Very nice.
It was
I had a friend, but I think it was an HP or something like that had an algorithm program, a biorhythm program on it.
Every computer I've ever owned,
yeah.
I had a biorhythm. Even this one, a biorhythm program for it.
He got mad at me because I was using up all his thermal paper.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, because it wasn't cheap. It
No,
wasn't cheap.
no, not back then.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a dime a dozen, literally.
So Neil Picklesheimer, if you're out there, I'm willing to replace the cost of that paper for you.
There you go. There you go. I gotta
Yes,
tell
that
you,
was his name too, by the way.
that's so funny. Yeah, I gotta tell you that's it's fun remembering those. And I mean, how many other peripherals can you guys remember out there? I mean, whether it's whether it's a small computer or whether it's
Yeah.
What else did I have on my list here? I had something else besides pocket computers and text and peripherals. Well, calculators, but that's kind of par and par for the course.
Mitch talked about the I believe she said floppies. I think she said something about 8.5 floppies. Maybe it was you that said that.
I was talking about the Ohio Scientific 8-inch floppies.
Yeah, it was you. It was you.
I love the 8-inch floppies. I mean, those were so cool. And I told you guys the story of. I'll share it again with you guys for anybody that hasn't heard it of my computer teacher and the magnets. So, when I was in high school, we had a computer teacher, Mr. Quesada. Mr. Quesada would
Mr. Cheesy.
Yeah, Mr. Quesada is the American. Quesada is the American pronunciation, I guess. Quesada is his name, Mr. Quesada, Alberto Quesada. So I really liked him. He was a great. He was a nice guy. He was a nice guy. Unfortunately, he was stepped on by a lot of the kids. He was that kind of teacher that you know. That people would make fun of him, they would, and he just, roll with it. But he would take offense to it, which would make some of the bullier kids just, dig into him worse. But for the most part, I liked him. He was a good computer teacher. The thing is, I can't really judge because at the time, myself, a friend of mine, Howard, a friend of mine, Alfred, Howard Shank, Alfred Daniel, if you guys are out there, contact me somehow because I can't find you anywhere.
Same with you, Neil.
And and so we were. With all due humility, we were smarter than the teacher by far. I mean, we could teach the course, but then again, I mean, it's like today's kids. There's a lot of kids today who can hack circles around the computer teachers, but anyway, getting on to this thing, we had 8-inch floppies. Each one of us bought whatever. I always bought a couple packs of floppies. In fact, I bought 5 or 6 packs and I sold them for $5 each. And then that way I made some money by splitting up a pack because nobody wanted to buy more than 2, one backup and one regular disc for their stuff. They would keep their backup in there and they would throw their main disc in the file cabinet. Now, here's what would happen. Everybody had in the file cabinet at school, everybody had a name and a file folder, a yellow file folder. At the end of class, we were supposed to drop in our assignments into that file folder. Now, Howard and I were making some very good money back then because the guys, the seniors, basically mostly the jocks, they didn't want to. Well, a lot of them couldn't get the program. I remember there were a few of the. Here's the funny part: I was a sophomore, and this was a junior level class, but I was let in because they allowed me to. I was writing for the juniors and for the seniors. I was writing code and I was fixing their code. I mean, I just changed variables. I write multiple versions of one program, whether it's a bubble sort or whatever, the basic programs. Good old times. And customize it with some of them with more, some of them with less. remarks, and all different. We were all really good at creating multiple versions of a program where nobody could identify your style, because some of them were really sloppily written. Some of them were very, very efficiently written. Ours were very efficiently written, but
of course.
So, and then when it came to fixing their programs, that was easy, because we'd run the program, we'd see where the problem is instantly. We see what we did there, and we'd fix it. We'd charge for every program and okay, wonderful. Now, come time to when we had far too many customers than we had time. So what would happen? The teacher would say, okay, your assignments are due tomorrow. And the seniors and the juniors are going, are you going to finish it by then? Are you going to finish it? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of you. We'll take care of you. $20 a program. We'll take care of a lot of people. And that was a lot of money back then. And so what do? Radio Shack sold this pack of little donut magnets. And we would drop the donut magnets in 5 or 6 folders. Okay. And the next day, everybody, we'd have backups of all the programs. The next day, everybody be pulling out their programs, whether they were a client of us or not. Half of the discs were completely demagnetized.
Scrambled, yeah.
And so they'd put them in, hey, my disc's not working. So the teacher would give us an extra week. All right. So we do it all the time. And the teacher would constantly Mr. Quesada would constantly get frustrated and keep telling the people, stop putting your discs on top of the monitor, because that's messing them up. And it wasn't that was messing him up. It was our little genius couple of guys.
Yeah. Was it even ethical?
Completely not. Completely. Those are one of the things that I'm not very proud of. I'm not proud of that, but it's my past.
Kids.
It's kids. It's ridiculous, but I got to tell you, I mean, can you say nobody got hurt with it? Yeah, I could say nobody got seriously. Yeah. I mean, in the end, okay, maybe they didn't learn as much as they did, but in the grand scheme of things, they
learned not to put the programs on top of the monitor.
Yeah, well,
whether or not
it made a difference and stuff. And so, I mean, the funny part is, after he'd give us a week, and in 2 days we'd finish all our programs. We'd have we'd actually have the backups of all the kids' discs, because their disc was in the folder. They were supposed to keep a backup. We'd have all their backups, and what would happen is we'd have access to the lab all the time. So we'd have access. Teacher would leave for home, and we'd be there all night, and I'd pull out all the magnets. And then nobody would know, because it wasn't in my folder where the magnets were. It was in random people's folders and stuff. And it was, I think, in empty folders. I would put them in between, and sometimes underneath all the folders, on the bottom. Well, regardless, I'd take out all the magnets. I'd have maybe 3 discs, and they'd have all the students' programs on it. Then I'd have all their discs. I'd format every single one of them and put all their programs right back. And it was good times. Good times. Oh, so bad. So bad. Hey, Ryan, good evening. Well, yeah, that was my little jaunt with cheating, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Cheating, yeah, that sounds like it.
And I mean, the funny part is, it's like, it's like, what can you? On the one hand, like I said, we were so advanced we could teach the class, so the A I received was justified for myself and Howard and Al, but the grades we gave the others, well, I don't know what the penalty for that would have been. But,
well, you were cheating. You were taking money to do their work.
I was a contractor.
Yes, yes. An entrepreneur, in fact.
I was an entrepreneur. Yeah, but those were great little computers. I mean, great big computers, actually. Ohio Scientific's stuff. I don't know. To this day, I don't know what they ran. I don't know if they were. I don't know if they were Unix. I don't know if they were if they ran DOS. I think they ran. Yeah, I think they. Yeah, it was all DOS. I mean, it's so far back. There's some of the gaps in my memory are, But
I want to say CPM. I really do.
It's possible.
It's possible. That was the main language back then. That I'm trying to look it up, but I can't spell.
Let me see here.
It was COBOL, or there was a COBOL.
No. It wouldn't have been. Hang on.
Compared to most programming languages, COBOL is
okay. Here we go. 77, but it was okay. So it would have been 82. Give me a second. It was a 6502. So basically, it didn't have graphics like the Apple II, but let's see, increased clock speed, simple LTTL latch, Winchester drive, 8-inch and 5 1/4-inch disc, unreadable by other computers. It was OSI. It was OSI 8-inch. OSI is the disk language, but Ohio Scientific.
But it was the basic programming language.
It was yes. Yeah,
which is the language I first learned.
The Superboard 2 was the least expensive computer, retailing for $279 with an onboard basic programming language. Yeah, there it is. Holy cow. That's what it looks. Microsoft 8K Basic. That's it. It was an OSI 6502 Basic version 1.0 by Microsoft. Yeah.
One really, and it's more of an operating system we didn't even touch on. Do you know what that was? MS-DOS, which was anyway one of the computer languages or disk operating systems of back at the 80s.
It was the disk operating system of the 80s. Well, I mean, I had the Mac operating system, but still, it's MS-DOS was I mean, between MS-DOS, CPM, what was the other one from OSX?
OSI.
OS2.
OS2, yes, OS2.
OS2.
And actually, DOS has some scripting in it. In fact, the new Windows and stuff has PowerShell and stuff. But I used to do batch programming with DOS that would do a lot of things, move stuff around.
Same here.
Display stuff, do changes.
Oh yeah,
do logical conditioning. I
love working with batches. Yeah, that was fantastic. Fantastic. You can write a bat program too, and oh man. And the times that I would get in there just to, as a prank for a friend, and I'd create a batch program that would, it would be, as soon as you pop in the disk, it would run the bat program and it would create another program and do whatever you wanted it to do. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Those were the days. There are a lot of those were the days. But anyways, that's what this show is all about. Those were the days. So, folks, thank you all for joining us here for our talk on computers and peripherals. And next week, we're going to have 70's and 80's portable tech. So we'll talk about, LED watches.
More like transportable tech.
Yeah. LED watches and whatnots. We'll try to come up with, hopefully I'll come up with something, but A lot of these things, some of these subjects you can't cover in an episode. Some of them are just like it's going to be filled with stories. Like I'll share with you my story of my LED watch. You're going to love that one.
Sounds like we have some homework to put some show notes together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to have to work on that this week. I think, okay, so Ryan thinks he played on MS-DOS at my grandparents' 8 hours to make a slide for 5 minutes on the TI machine. Yeah, probably.
Instrument machine, yeah.
Yep. That's funny. Well, folks, thank you all for coming in and listening to the podcast. And for all of you out there, we'll see you all next week, God willing. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Live long and prosper.
Peace and long life, folks.